Okay, so this is like Underlords. Like some of you guys are asking me, like which Underlord's good and what's like their strength, weakness, or something like that, right? So we can just talk a little bit about that. So the first one is Anestics. Like her ability is that she summons a demon. Like these units are demons. Also, the golem is a demon. So how demon bonuses work is like you get 50% extra damage when a demon casts a spell. Like that demon who casts a spell gets 50% extra damage as pure damage for every demon that's been on your board. So every time an archer gets summoned, if it dies and you summon a new one, then that would give 100% pure damage extra to like a demon who casted a spell. So because of that, when you're playing with demons, you want to play with an Essex. It doesn't matter if it's damage or healing support. So she gives a demon. That's why like when you play with demons, it's a really good idea to play her. So some like her damage support is like she gives damage and then enthrall like gives minus armor. The problem with this Essex is it has no defensive abilities at all. So she can like die pretty quickly. She doesn't heal your board or anything like that. She's just vulnerable. She just pretty much like gives steroids to your board. That's it. She's normally rated like in a pretty good spot in physical damage builds with demons especially. And then I like her more than healing support in most situations, unless I'm playing with like healer alliance, then I'll like healing support and Essex more. So healing support and Essex heals your board for a little bit, and then it also summons this golem to the enemy backline that's like furthest away, and it stuns the opponent. So this one is like really good in like knight builds because your knights have Chaos Knight, so that Chaos Knight really benefits from the demons. So he does like a bunch of damage in the mid game and late game especially. Your Chaos Knight could be chunking for like 200% pure damage in the late game, especially if he stays alive because of this. So that's why those that's an Essex, right? So Jewel, he's a tank. Like you pretty much play him in like any builds where you need tanks, where you have a lot of like range units pretty much. If you have many melee units in your build, you don't want to go Jewel. It's generally a bad idea to play him with melee units, which is kind of weird because he gets armor for other units beside him and stuff like that. And when you play Jewel, don't like put him in the front line. Put him in like as a secondary tank. So if you have, let's say, a Pudge on your team, right? Use your Pudge as your primary tank, then put your Jewel like next to your Pudge or behind your Pudge. So the Jewel enters the fight later, because he's gonna die too fast and he's your Underlord. You don't want him to die fast, right? So yeah, so he's got the passive ability, he gains 5 armor per adjacent unit, so he's kind of tanky. So aggressive tank, he reduces damage and then he gets like attack speed and like a lifesteal is like a steroid. And then his barrels is like, it does damage to your opponent. It reduces their magic resistance and physical resistance. And if it hits your team, you get bonus attack speed on your units. So he's like an aggressive tank because he's not as tanky. Like he doesn't make your teammates tanky, but he can deal damage himself. He's actually a pretty good unit at dealing damage. Normally you don't see him played a lot right now because like all the other Underlords are kind of better in most situations. But like if you're lacking a tank in your build, you're gonna want to take Jewel regardless. So healing tank, he reduces same like the roundhouse, that like same thing as the other tank, but what he does is he heals your team for the damage that he takes during the duration. So during that 5 seconds, he will heal your team for the damage that he takes. So this one's like a super tank, and the reason why like he makes your team super tanky, like he himself is not tankier than the aggressive tank. The aggressive tank, like for himself, is actually tankier because he can lifesteal, right? But this one is tank. He can make your entire team tankier. So Happy Hour is pretty much the biggest reason why you would play the healing tank. He buys around for all members of your team. When taking damage, 50% of it is received immediately, and the rest is taken over 10 seconds. So your units can't be bursted down, and they have enough time because their damage that they're taking is reduced, and they take it over time. They have a chance to potentially cast more spells and more attacks in the fight. So this one is like the Omega tank, right? Like this one makes your entire board tanky, not be bursted down, especially once Happy Hour comes off. And it lasts for the entire duration of the fight. So it's super good as a tank for your team. But what you need with this one is a lot of damage dealers on your side. Like aggressive tank can do damage for you, but healing tank literally deals like 0 damage. Like this healing tank Jewel does like no damage. So you need to pair it with like a lot of damage dealers or like waste or units that like need to stay alive. So this is a tank underlord. So to summarize Joel, you just take him whenever you need tanks on your team. When you're lacking tanks. So Enno's the new underlord, right? He's really like he's really annoying when he first came out. He's more balanced now for sure. So he's got escape artist. So every time he loses like 25% of his health, he escapes from the fight and lands like somewhere far away and stuns the opponent. So he's pretty cool because of that ability. Like he's not easy to kill, even though he looks a bit squishy. He's not easy to kill at all. So you don't have to worry too much about like if you feel like in your game your underlords die a lot, play with Enno. Like he's not gonna die. Normally Enno is like the last unit that dies in the fight. The last unit. Like you have to silence him or stun him for a long time to kill him. In other situations, your underlords can potentially die first. Healing and stealing. So he has a heal where he heals your entire team, and he gives like double the healing for the unit that has like the lowest amount of health or something. And then he also does the poison. He applies poison onto all your opponents as well. So he heals everybody on your team, but he applies poison in the AoE that is like he can apply poison in. So he's like dealing damage but also healing your entire team. And then he's really good in like knight builds, healer builds, or units that have like a lot of like low stars, so you can try to keep them alive longer so they can cast their spells. Yoink, what it does is it pretty much removes the enemy's lowest tiered item and it gives it to you. There's some items that you can't use, like you can't steal, like for example Voidstone, because Voidstone is not usable by the Enno. So is like I think the Bloodbound, like the Ogre cap as well. I'm not sure how the caps are working right now. I don't think you can steal caps as well. But yeah, so he steals one of the items at the start of the fight, and then throughout the fight, whenever a better tiered item like dies, like from your opponent, he will steal that. So for example, if the enemy Medusa has like Vladimir's, when the enemy Medusa dies, he steals the Vlads. So now he has the Vlads. So the higher the tier the item, he'll steal that as long as the enemy unit dies. If the enemy unit doesn't die, or like if the enemy unit dies and it's a lower tier item, he won't steal it. Yeah, he can yoink a horn and summon his own like Thunderhide. He can do that. So it's pretty cool too. But I would rate it not like I wouldn't rate like healing Enno that high right now, because he's not that good in like these super high physical damage lineups and bursty lineups. He can die. Especially he dies really fast against like Vigilant in the last patch, because Vigilant just like targets him as soon as he casts a spell. So it kind of hurts him a lot. He's not good at like tanking damage. He's good at escaping from damage though. So Rabbit Furball, this is a cool one. Death Spin. So his one doesn't heal, but it's like the same effect. He spins and then he applies poison. But since he's like the offensive Enno, it does extra damage on top of the poison. So it applies a stack of poison and deals extra physical damage per stack as well. So it does poison and it does extra damage compared to the healing Enno that just applies poison. And then all out attack, Enno launches an all out attack against all enemies, adding 2 stacks of poison, dealing some damage and stunning them for 1.5 seconds. So this one is like it just AoEs all the opponent units, it stuns them up and applies 2 stacks of poison, which is really nice. So poison is like it reduces enemy healing and it does like damage depending on how many stacks it has. So he's really nice, especially one thing to understand is like poison is physical damage, so it's really good paired up with Heartless. So in Heartless builds, when you have all out attack, it can pretty much wipe out like your opponent's backline really quickly with all the poison. It's good against spirits too, yeah, that's true, because then they can't cast their spells. So this is pretty good. Rabbit Furball. I like using it quite often. So Hobgin here, Hobgin's passive ability, but they both have it, is that they put the enemy on fire for 3 seconds. So fire is like, it does like 3% of enemies max HP as damage per second. I think it's 3% or just 1.5. We can just see that. Glossary, we just go to our glossary, see fire. 2.5% of their max health every second, that's fire. Okay. Yeah, that's not it. So Hobgen does 2.5% of the max HP per second. That's a passive ability. So there's the high damage dealer. So we call this the friendly fire Hobgen. So his implosion, it pretty much does like double the damage of the other one. So it's like a big like burst spell that does damage. It's really good in mages, 6 mages especially. Friendly fire, it throws a bunch of bombs around the board. Sometimes they miss, sometimes they hit, and it does like a bunch of magic damage as well. So this Hobgen is a lot like a magic dealer. I've seen a lot of other good players. They like to take this friendly fire Hobgen in 6 mages. And what it can do in 6 mages is like it can delay the game long enough for you to hit your end game. Cause like if you don't kill off the enemy unit, like friendly fire can kill off enemy units when they're like low health, right? So like you're, instead of taking like 10 damage around, you might be taking like 2 or 3 damage around instead, because of this Hobgen. And that can help you like reach your end game with like some HP, right? But apart from that, you don't normally see high damage dealer in any builds as of right now. So support damage dealer, this one is really good because he support damage dealer benefits physical damage builds a lot. So shockwave, it's like the same as the implosion, but it stuns the enemy for 1.5 seconds. So it stuns the main target and the adjacent targets. So it's a really good like crack control spell. And then you have Let's Go Crazy, where like after some duration of the fight, he activates Let's Go Crazy, and your teammates get like a steroid of attack speed, right? So your entire army gains 35 to 90 increased attack speed. So that depends on what level the Hobgen is. And he'll continually switch targets to units that are not on fire. So he's gonna keep hitting everyone and putting them on fire, so they keep taking this percentage-based damage. So when your whole team gets attack speed, so you're playing like Heartless builds or Savage builds or whatever, like this attack speed can do a lot for you. In the last patch, where the 4 Savages were so popular with the Hunters, Let's Go Crazy was like the #1 Underlord, because he just gave attack speed out to your Hunters, and then they just kept building up their damage through the Savages. So this one is really good in physical damage builds. So that's all the